My name is Trevor Lecca. I'm Dubsado's product education lead. And today's webinar is all about payment plans. The title of our webinar today is Mastering Payment Plans for Your Dubsado Business. And we have a really great guest on today to talk about payment plans. They're really kind of a complex topic. There's a lot to talk about, but she's going to do a fantastic job boiling down all the need to know information for your business in Dubsado. And I can't wait to hear what she has to say. Our guest today is Kelly McCracken, and she's a Dubsado certified specialist who helps wedding professionals streamline their workflows and create exceptional client experiences. She's got 3 years of experience customizing systems, and she's passionate about helping business owners save time through automation. And payment plans that we're talking about today is a perfect way to save you time and automate a good portion of your business. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Kelly McCracken.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Trevor, for having me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Kelly. We really appreciate it. And like I said before, this is a lot of information to get through, but I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. And I know our users are going to have a ton of fun learning from you. So let's go ahead and do it.
Amazing.
Yeah. Robin said she's a client of yours and you're amazing. I love that.
Hello, Robin. Welcome. Oops, hold on.
Oh, you're good. Do your thing. I love that you have clients in here just like ready to go to bat for you. I love that. That's fantastic. There we go.
I love it. There's always more to learn is what I like to say.
That's very true. All right.
All right. Does everything look good?
Everything looks great. You're perfect.
All right. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. As Trevor said, there's sort of a lot to cover. There's a lot of nuances with payment plans, but I'm hoping today you can leave feeling a little more confident to set them up for yourself and feeling like you know a little bit more about payment plans that you maybe didn't know before. So I'm Kelly. I was the second grade teacher and I turned Dubsado expert, and I became a certified Dubsado specialist in 2021. I help business owners set up their Dubsado accounts fully, and I offer coaching calls for people who are looking for help and just need help streamlining things. And I love to create a great client experience. I live just north of Boston with my husband, my daughter, and my black lab, Olive. She's the best. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, but let's just dive in. Oh, and before I forget, if you are on Instagram, you could take a picture at any point during this presentation today. If you tag me at kellymccracken.co, I'm going to choose one winner for a discounted coaching session with me. So make sure you enter at some point before tomorrow, about 24 hours from now, I'll draw the winner. So today, here's what I'd love for you to leave with as you exit this webinar. I want you to understand why you should be offering payment plans in Dubsado, how to really use them effectively and efficiently, and some common mistakes that you might be making and how to correct them. And I'm going to actually show you 4 example payment plans that maybe you aren't using for your business that you'd like to set up. And I'll show you exactly how to do that today. So first and foremost, I think we all just need to get on the same plan and say, what is really a payment plan that we're talking about? If you are brand new to Dubsado or if you're an avid user, a payment plan is really for everybody. When you log into Dubsado, there's a left-hand side of templates that exist, and the payment plan is one of those templates. And what they do is they let you create invoice due dates. They split large invoices into installments or multiple payments, and they follow up and they send follow-up payment reminders automatically. You are always welcome to customize payment plans to fit your business needs, but creating a payment plan template is really about thinking about the structure of how you'd like most clients to be paying you on a specific schedule. So this is just so you know, depending on where you're at as a user, if you're like a brand new user, this may not make total sense yet, but when you get to the point of you're using Dubsado pretty proficiently, payment plans can be added multiple ways. In Dubsado, there's a lot of ways to do the same things, or there's multiple ways to do the same things. So you can add a payment plan template to an invoice manually. You can just tell it which one you'd like to apply. Later on, you can also apply them using a proposal. In your proposal settings, you can select a payment plan that you'd like to be applied, or you can add them via a workflow. Payment plans are also a great way to allow your clients to enroll in autopay, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. So a lot of questions that I see a lot on like the Facebook group, for example, or when people are chatting about Dubsado, they're like not really sure how to use a payment plan or if they can use one for their business. But I would argue that yes, every business can be utilizing a payment plan template in some form, even if customizations need to be made. So that means even if you are setting them up manually for each client, you can absolutely still be using a payment plan. So setting them up in your system makes it really easy. And it also can eliminate a lot of errors by trying to do it or trying to do it each time for a client. We all know that when you need to set that up quickly, it's easy for things to slip through the cracks. So when you have a payment plan template, it makes it so, like I said, you can make changes if you need to, but it's making it so that you're not making any errors and you really know that all of your reminders and due dates are set up as they should be. Payment plans are a great way to make sure you get paid on time. So really the whole point of your business, right? We want to make sure that your clients are paying your invoices and that they're getting paid in full when they should be. If you think about even doing this manually each time for a client, even if it just takes you 5 minutes to set up the reminders or set up the due dates, that adds up over time. So let's say you did that every single day, even on 5 business days, right? That's almost a half an hour of your time that you could be getting back by just applying a template. So I really, like I said in the beginning, I love to find ways to save you time. If that gets you a half an hour back in your week, that's like a whole class you could go to. That's something else you could be doing. So finding ways to be more efficient. So let's talk about the reminders itself. We are going to look at a real invoice in a moment, and you can get a better idea of what I mean. But the payment plan reminders are automated emails that remind your clients either about an upcoming payment, that their payment is due today, or that their payment is late. This can be completely customized on whatever timetable you want it to be set to. But this is one automation that everybody can set up. So even if you are not at the point where you're using workflows, this is something that I do recommend everybody set up when you're sending invoices through Dubsado. If the invoice installment is paid, then the reminders will not be sent. They only are sent if the invoice installment is not paid. So it's a nice automation that makes sure that nothing is going out when it shouldn't be. Just as another quick FYI, if you are using payment reminders, you should never have them inside of your workflow. Payment reminders should always be set up inside of the template that we're talking about today. So no matter what, inside of the template. There are canned emails available for you to customize and edit inside of a client project. They are from Dubsado. You can look in your canned emails there, and you can really personalize them to match your voice as well. So they don't necessarily have to be what Dubsado had, but they're pretty straightforward. And they're really, like I said, again, the purpose is to get your client to pay you on time. Another thing we'll touch on today is something called recurring invoices. So recurring invoices are great for clients who are paying you a monthly retainer that is the same amount each month. Payment plan templates are great for a client who's paying down an invoice balance over time, where recurring invoices may happen, with no end date, or it may be, let's say for 6 months, they're going to pay you $500. Recurring invoices are a great thing to set up so that you make sure you're getting paid on time for each of those as well. They do need to be set up manually. So recurring invoices cannot be started from a proposal. We will have to set them up to say, I want it to start on this date and I'm charging this amount, and it's due at this time. So we'll go through this in detail today. And like I said, you can start and set the end dates, but it is another option for a lot of business owners that they may not be utilizing currently. And then just FYI, when you log into Dubsado and you'll see how much money you've been paid so far and how many open invoices you have, when you're using recurring invoices, it's not going to show up completely on your open invoices. The reason being, when an invoice is created from a recurring invoice, that amount is then created inside of your Dubsado account. So just to be aware, if your business is mostly working on recurring invoices, then it's just something to keep in mind if you use those financial goals as trackers, that it's not going to be open until the invoice is actually created. I just see some things in the chat, just making sure. Does anyone have questions about anything so far? Great. Okay. Just talking about recording. Okay. So let's look at a sample invoice in Dubsado that would be client facing. So let's just go through it from top to bottom here. Just FYI, again, if you're new or if you're not sure where this is coming from, inside of your Dubsado settings, the logo that you select when you actually make your account, this is what actually appears on the top and is also client facing. So make sure that that's a super clear image that is also like big enough that people can really see it on your invoice. So be sure to test this and see what it looks like. So I'm using Ross and Rachel, if you're a Friends fan here, as reference here today for their wedding. I work with a lot of wedding professionals, so we're just going to chat about Ross and Rachel's wedding today. But you'll see here at the top, this is the name of the project inside of Dubsado. So that is client facing as well, just to keep that in mind. The invoice number is just for you on the back end, which number it is that has been created, more for like a bookkeeping standpoint, and the date it was actually made. Now, here are your client details that you have. So any of the details that you have for this client, like their address, their home address, or their email, phone number, things like that, that will appear here. And then the business owner side of things. I'm just using a test like demo account today, so that's what you'll see here. Now, down below, you'll see whatever items you'd like to add on to this invoice itself. So you'll see the package name. This one has a description of what is included inside of this package. And then below it, you'll see that this one just has a description with no bullet. I'm sorry, just a title with no bullets. Then the quantity of how many and the price. So let's say, for example, if you were a stationer and you had something at like, let's say it's $2.60 and they were ordering 100 of them, it would show that here, that there's 100 of those invitations, the price, and then the subtotal would be the total price. So this is the price per item. So now down below, which is what we're talking about today, is setting up this payment plan as automated as possible. So in this example here, you'll see that the due date was actually 10/18. So this one is showing as overdue. And the amount that's due to me today, or due today, is $250. Now down below it, you'll see that there's a second installment due, which is working around their actual wedding date, which I think I set them as a New Year's Eve wedding. So this is about 2 weeks before their actual wedding date. The remaining balance is due. So they'll be able to come and click on the Pay Now. They can select either the Dubsado payments, PayPal. We're not going to get too much into that today, but definitely look at your account and see what your client sees when they click on this. So once they pay this balance here, it will show up as a record that shows that they've paid that initial balance and whatever the remainder is. So like I said, this should be something that you don't have to think about. You don't have to touch. We're trying to get this as automated as possible. I'm just going to jump back into my presentation. Okay. So auto pay is another option that we'll talk about as well. And I put a QR code here so that you can really read up on all of the details. As I mentioned, this is kind of nuanced, so you have to make sure that there are certain settings set up in your account specifically. But overall, auto pay means that your clients can set up automatic withdrawals so that they don't have to actually go in and click on the invoice to pay it. It will just take that from their account. It can be a credit card or it can be an e-check option. It can be an option on both payment plans and recurring invoices. However, they do, if you're using it on a payment plan template, it does need to have more than 2 installments on that payment plan. So it can't be like a pay in full payment plan because they need to pay that first. So like I said, there's a lot we can cover. So make sure to scan that QR code. And if you're not using it already, it may be a nice option for you. So here are 4 examples I'm going to show you inside of my demo account here. We're going to talk about asking for a fixed deposit with 2 remaining payments, 3 payments that are divided equally. So no matter what the balance is, the client is offered 3 payments, 2 payments with 1 being due first, and then the final is TBD. And then we'll set up a recurring invoice together, which I think is a little bit of the trickiest, I would say. When the slides are shared afterwards, I do have the directions here as well, but I'm going to jump into my account so that we can do this together. Are there any questions about that so far? Looks good. Okay, I think we're okay. Okay, so for the first one, we're going to talk about a fixed deposit and 2 final payments that need to be made. So I'm going to come into my templates and click on payment plans, and that will bring you to this page here. So I'm going to click on create new template. One thing I do want to mention, or something that I think happens a lot when you're setting up your Dubsado account, is not thinking through first what you want to happen or what you need in order to build this template. So, for example, I'm going to make sure that I have 3 emails that are created that are going to remind my clients that there's a payment that's coming up, there's a payment that it's due today, and there's a late payment. Your business may or may not need those emails, and each payment plan we talk about today may or may not need them. But try to think about setting that up first. So then when we go to create the payment plan, we have everything ready to go. So because this is actually going to have 3 installments, I'm going to have the deposit and then 2 other installments due. I'm going to first start by clicking all 3. So now we have 3 installments that are already created on my account. Now I'm going to customize each one. So for the first one, the due date is actually going to be after the client signs the contract. That's when I want the payment to be due. I want you to try to use that most of the time. Most of the time, you really should be using a relative due date. Rarely will a template have a fixed due date or a TBD due date. Most of the time, it's going to be relative to when the invoice is actually created for the client. Now, like I said, there's obviously exceptions to that rule and things that will change, but try as best you can to use the relative one. Next, I am going to set this up as 0 days after the contract is signed. And for this example, like I said, this is a fixed payment. So I'm going to set this up as a fixed amount due. So let's assume that a client filled out a proposal and they selected my lowest package, for instance. Let's say it's $3,000 for a photography, for a wedding, elopement, or something like that. So I need to make sure that my fixed payment is greater than that balance. If they selected then my middle package or my highest package, this also needs to make sense, whatever that fixed payment is. So try to keep that in mind when you are setting up your payment plans, because if you're letting the client choose whatever you want it to be, that fixed deposit needs to be kind of relative or make sense for whatever that is. So I'm going to put it in as I want them to, no matter what they select, they're going to pay me $1,000 as their deposit. Now, I'm actually not going to set up reminders for this payment. One option or one exception to that rule that I sometimes do is I'll put one reminder in saying that you've signed your contract, but you haven't made your payment. So you haven't actually booked my services yet. But for the most part, I don't want to put any reminders on here, mostly because this is their first initial deposit. They're not actually a booked client yet until they have done both of those steps. So now for these final 2 payments here, I am going to say that we're sort of working around the project date. So again, let's stick with the wedding example. Let's say that it's 3 months before the project start date or the project date itself. I want this next payment to be due. In that case now, I am not going to actually put in an amount due, because what I want it to do is divide out the remaining balance into 2 50-50 payments. So sort of similar to the relative due date up here, I want to use this whenever possible, divide equally. So I'm going to leave it as divide equally, and it will default to 50% because I have those 2 remaining payments there. Now I am going to set up reminders. Your client is not going to get an email unless you set up these reminders as well. So I typically like to do 3 days before the due date. They're going to get an upcoming payment reminder. So you can search here once you have your emails ready. Upcoming payment. Then I also do one on the due date, which means it's going to be set to 0 days before the due date. And I have one that says due today. And then again, another one 3 days after the due date. So this one will now be the payment is late. And you can set up however many you'd like here. Again, this is totally custom, but this is past due. So now if the client pays it on this first reminder, these will not go out. These will only be sent if the client does not pay this second installment here. Now, another option is you can duplicate these if you wanted to add the installment that way. For today, I'm just going to set it up manually, but it is an option that once you have those reminders set, you can duplicate it so that you don't have to do it again. But this time the relative due date is going to be 30 days before the project start date. Again, I'm going to leave this as divide equally, and I'll add my reminders. 2 days before the due date, upcoming. While I finish that up, are there any questions about that I can answer? Nothing. Okay. All right. So we can move on to the next one, but now you'll see here we have our 3 installments created. I forgot to mention as well, you can label this whatever you'd like to. I usually like to be descriptive. Let's stick with the wedding example, that this is the wedding's fixed deposit. This is not client facing, so this is just for you on your back end. All right, if there's no questions, I'll move on to the next one. So the next one we're going to do is 3 payments divided equally. So instead of offering that fixed deposit, we're going to use that relative installment so that it just divides it, no matter what the invoice balance is, to be 3 equal payments. So I'm going to do the same thing again to set up 3 equal payments here. The first one is usually going to be, again, 0 days after the contract is signed by the client. That's when the due date is. So even if that was like minutes before, if you're using the proposal contract invoice, we want this invoice due date to be set at exactly that. And you'll see now this time, because I have 3 installment payments here and I'm using divide equally, the amount due is now automatically calculating the 33.33%. Again, I'm not going to put a reminder here because they're not a booked client yet. And then this is where I would still use the relative dates. Let's say this time it's 6 months before the project start date. I'm going to leave this as divide equally. And then you can add your reminders as I just did before. So whatever upcoming payment schedule, due today, and late schedule you'd like to follow.
We had a question in the Q&A, actually, Kelly. Sorry to jump on and interrupt.
Great.
They were asking about if they could see an example of your payment reminder emails. And I thought it might be prudent just to talk about it now, since you're just showing how to add those reminders as well. Do you want to take a brief detour and show those payment reminders real quick?
Sure. This is my demo account. So these are not my actual ones.
Yeah. Okay.
But I can show you an example here, what I might do instead. Let's just look at this one.
Cool.
So like I said, you can really personalize this to be like in your voice. So instead of hey, I like to use hi, and I still say, hi, client first name. But you'll see here, this is defaulting to whatever Dubsado has put in there with their smart field. So this is a friendly reminder that your payment of is due on so-and-so a date. So if you come down here into smart fields here, you can look at the payment plans, smart fields here, and you can select like which type of due date, the simple or the longer one, I believe, and then the amount due and simple. And then there is a invoice one here, which can also tell them like how much is remaining on their invoice if you wanted to do that instead. So you could say like you have blah, blah, blah left towards your final invoice balance, like please play X, Y, and Z today.
Yeah.
You can also include the payment plan here or what's left. So you can really personalize that. But I always like to make sure you have the invoice link for sure. And sometimes I may say like, please pay with the e-check option if you'd like to avoid those credit card fees, like things like that.
Totally. Cool. Thank you, Kelly.
yeah, was there any other like specifics on that?
I think that was, oh, hang on one second. Let's take a double check here. This might be a good one to tackle right now as well from Brenda. I'll go ahead and read it aloud to us. Is there a way to get these set up when one of your packages doesn't get charged until the project is launched? For instance, I do 40% deposit on a web design project and 60% once we launch, plus the hosting and maintenance starts at launch, so it's charged then. So it sounds like they're taking an existing invoice with maybe a base fee, and then once they actually begin working, they're adding value to that invoice.
Yeah.
That is obviously a bit more complex of a situation, but do you have any thoughts on how you would go about handling that?
Definitely. Let's go on to the next one where the second payment might be TBD. And I think that might answer that question.
Sweet. Sounds good.
So yeah, so I didn't finish this up, but I think you guys get the idea that you can set whatever due dates you'd like here and making sure they're just divided equally whenever possible. And it really is like Brenda is saying, like sort of similar where we want to make sure if you add something to the invoice that it's still not going to be off balance and it's still saying that you need to pay this payment in full. So let's say we can use that example as like, this is a 40% due, 60% due at some unknown time. So I'm still going to do the same thing where I set up 2 installments. I'm going to assume this first payment is a deposit. So I'm going to set it again as when after the client signs the contract. We can use the percentage or set up a fixed here. So let's say it's 40% of the due date. Whoops, there we go, 40%. And that one would be due after the contract is signed. Yes. Okay. So then this next payment, you can definitely leave this as TBD and put this remaining as still divide equally. So if you select TBD, your client will actually see that on the invoice itself. I actually do this myself for my clients where I'm not necessarily sure exactly when I'm going to finish their project. So then I'll just leave it here, but it will still show that this is a second payment that will be due. Then if you still leave it as divide equally, I actually wouldn't do 60% here because if you add something, it's going to maybe mess that up. And we want to use this whenever possible to say that this balance needs to be a percentage or divided among whatever is left. And then you can set up your reminders as well. But it's totally fine to leave this as TBD. Your client will still just see this remaining balance. I hope that answers your question. What I'll normally do then is go into, let me see if I can pull up Rachel Green. What I'll normally do before I send that to the client then is then I can go in and set the due date when I want it to be. So let's say the launch is coming up or you're ready to say, okay, your invoice balance is due now. Then I'll just come in and select whatever fixed date I want it to be. So you can edit this after the fact to set up TBD. Then these reminders will go out from there. So it will usually say like only due today and your payment is past due. And I'll just manually send it to the client from here to say, hey, your project's ready to launch. Here's your invoice balance. But it still saved me, quite a bit of time of having to do that every time. Perfect. Okay, great.
We did have one other pretty specific question about how to build a payment plan out, but I know you have more to get to in your slides. Do you want to come back to more specific examples at the end, or do you want me to go ahead and read Christy's question to everyone?
Yeah, go ahead and read the next one.
Okay, cool. So Christy was asking, how would I create a payment plan for a service where they pay an initial payment that includes the service and the first month retainer, and then they get billed monthly for the retainer, or if they maybe wanted to do quarterly for the retainer service, right? Mm-hmm. I know in my mind, I think there's kind of 2 different ways to go about this, but what are your thoughts on that?
So they pay in full, the full first month and for the project?
Yeah, it sounds like they have an initial deposit or payments, and then they want to maybe include the first month's retainer. But then after that, they're getting billed a regular amounts, either monthly or quarterly is what it sounds like.
Perfect. Actually, you guys are setting this up perfect for me. So I was going to talk about recurring invoices next. So that's perfect. So
my thought too. Perfect.
Yes. Yeah. So that's great. So if you're using a proposal and they select that package and it includes that first retainer month, I would make sure that your packages actually list that out as whatever that first package is that they're paying with you in the description, making sure that it says exactly that the first month or this first payment includes the first retainer month. Then for me, what I would do then is go in and set up the recurring payment to start the month after. So let's say that they were paying in full for November. I would then go in and set up the recurring payment to start then in December. So let's go back to Rachel. If you can have that pay in full, that'd be great. Then they can just be like all said and done. I understand if that's not always the case, but oops. Okay, let's go back. Sorry, we're loading here. Just out of curiosity, what is the business that we're talking about here?
For Christy, yeah, she didn't mention. Let's see if she goes ahead and drops it in the chat for us real quick there. You might just try giving your page a hard refresh. It looks like it might just be a little hung up. There we go. Cool.
Okay, great. All right. So in the invoices,
she mentions it's operations management strategy.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So I would say if it's business to business, hopefully you can then have them make that payment in full. What will happen is when we come into their invoice, that first invoice will be their like primary one here. And the recurring invoice is now going to keep stacking and adding a new invoice on. So when we come into their project on their invoice tab, you'll see this option for recurring invoices. Let me just trash this one so I can restart here. I'm going to click add. Dubsado gets mad sometimes when I'm clicking around too fast. There we go. Okay. So let's say, like I just said in that example, they paid in full for October. Yes, October. And let's say we're going to start in November. So if this is a monthly payment, we're going to set it to every 1 month. Let's just start it on November 1st. And let's say that they are going to pay us for, let's say, 3 months. I'm going to come back to that end date in a moment, but this is now where you're going to pull in your packages to say for the recurring service, I want to pull this in here. So I'm just going to use this as an example because it's here, but pretend this says something about whatever your recurring package is. This is the amount that they need to pay in full, just as a reminder. So there's no payment plans on recurring invoices. What this is going to do now is create an invoice on the 1st every single month. So this is going to create, let's say, 3 invoices. Now, the payment plan, you don't have to have one, but sometimes I like to have one so that it has reminders going out. So you can create one in your templates like we just were, or you can have a pay in full one. And what I would do in this case is, this is where I would use the relative due date to say 0 days after this is applied, this payment plan is applied to the invoice. Because remember, the recurring invoice is like creating it for you. So in this case, there's no contract or anything being signed. I want it to be due when that invoice is actually created. There's a lot of like adjustments you can do here, but for this example, let's just say it's due on the 1st and the invoice is being created on the 1st. So now I'm not going to say, actually, I am going to put in that 0 days after the due date. They're still going to get their payment is due today. And then I'm going to add this on so that now 3 days after, if they still don't pay it, then it's late payment due. So this payment plan in this sense isn't really dividing out that total balance anymore. It's just helping us make sure that the recurring invoice reminders are going out correctly. This is probably one of the trickiest things to set up and have it done correctly. So definitely make sure to like test and it's set up on the time frame that you want. But let me just come back to that end date. So let me actually fix this first. I want this to be due, yes, 0 days after. So after payment plan applied to invoice. So this will actually correct itself. See how the due date right now says today. This is going to actually be set on November 1st. Sometimes it's a little delayed there, but it will fix itself. So this end date here, you don't have to have one in there. It can be open-ended, that they're going to be on recurring invoices until they tell you they want to stop, and that's totally fine. But let's just say we're doing November, December, and January. So you'll see here that I selected the end date of the 31st. I can select any end date really after the 1st, but I like to give myself a little wiggle room here to make sure that that balance goes out on the 1st and they pay that recurring invoice. So it doesn't matter so much about that. It really just matters that I don't necessarily want it to be on like the same day. I want to give it a little breathing room to make sure that all of your like reminders and everything go out correctly. So let's just say I'm going to set it as the 8th. And then I'll click Start Recurrence. Again, it's important to make sure these are set up correctly and that you are happy with it before you start it, because there's no way to pause it and edit it. Nothing has gone out to the client yet at this point because it's not being created until the 1st. So I can still, of course, like make changes if I made an error. But just so you know, you need to end it before it actually like continues. Like you can't edit it live, if that makes sense. I see some questions. I just want to make sure I'm answering those.
I'll jump back in here. Yeah, sorry. It's probably confusing if you're doing an example and then I'm answering questions in the chat there. So I'll catch you up here. I think hopefully, Christy, tell us if you have more questions about your example, since that's what Kelly was finishing there. But let's jump over to Mary's question, since she had a really interesting one. So she was asking about specifically, she has boudoir photography, I assume, and she's taking payments every Friday, and she wanted to create a template that would basically start, the Friday after the client shoots, and then she's collecting payments for 52 weeks, right? So for a full year, once a week. And that's kind of similar to what we were just talking about, where it's, weekly or quarterly. But Mary, if you could tell us, let me know in the chats, does it end at 52 weeks, or are you doing it once a week indefinitely? Because that's really the difference maker there. That's a little bit of what is similar to this last example we were doing. But Kelly, it does end at 52 weeks. Okay, cool. Mary says it's just 52 weeks. So Kelly, in my mind, tell me what you think of this. You could do one payment plan template with 52 payments if you wanted to, right?
Mm-hmm.
She was mentioning that it takes forever to set that up or to do it manually. And I can only imagine Mary doing 52 separate payments. But do you want to just take a quick moment in a payment plan template and just show, like, you can just add as many different installments as you like and set that up for 1 week after each of those? Can I show that?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah, that's where that duplicate feature is really helpful, where you don't have to like edit each one. You would just have to edit the due date itself to be weekly. I feel like it is possible that you could set up a recurring invoice.
That's the other option. Exactly.
Yeah.
You didn't set up one payment plan template for this that has 52 installments. You could just do a weekly recurring invoice. That's what I was kind of trying to mention there earlier, Mary. I know this is a very specific scenario, but I wanted to make sure that she was aware of both options there, essentially.
Yeah. It would definitely be like a little time consuming to set this up, but hopefully if you were, selling that and it was offering that, it's definitely possible to like keep hitting duplicate, and you can have it be a set amount, whatever you want it to be, with the reminders and whatnot. I feel like I forgot to mention the auto pay, but I feel like that would also be a great option to require auto pay in that sense, where if it's a small amount that they're paying weekly, it's just coming out of their account, that they don't have to think about. But the recurring invoice, you can also set it up weekly. So there's other options here to say,
instead of monthly, have weekly under there. Exactly.
Yeah, 1 time a week.
Because in that sense, then you would just set it to 1 week, and you could set that end date to essentially whatever exactly a year from the end of your shoot is, right?
Exactly. Yep. So 1 time a week, it could start on whatever date and then set it to a year from now.
Exactly.
With that little buffer. Yeah.
That would certainly be the less time-consuming way to set it up, Mary. But if you didn't want to have 52 different invoices, then you would do the payment plan option, and that's really the main difference there. With the recurring invoice, you're going to end up with a new invoice with each of those recurrences. With one payment plan, it's just going to be one very long payment plan on the same invoice, effectively.
Yep.
Got it. She says that she uses auto pay, but it's the manual entry of finding 52 Fridays for every single client. Gotcha. So in that case, it'd probably be easier just to do the recurring invoice, because if you just set it to weekly, it'll just hit every single Friday.
Yeah.
So,
and yes, you can require it on auto pay.
Exactly.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Sorry to get into the weeds there. I know we had some really great questions. I appreciate everyone in the chat for answering questions. And Kelly, I will let you take it away.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like being able to help you guys. So I appreciate your questions.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope I covered everything on some examples there, but I'll just mention it one more time just to make sure. So on on recurring invoices, you can set up auto pay, and on the template itself, you can also override that if you'd like it to be required. But just as a reminder, you do have to have more than 2 installments. Be sure to read up about that because there's a lot of little like settings that you have to make sure are correct in your account. But it is a nice option, especially if they're paying multiple times over like 3 or 4 months, that they don't have to think about it, and go ahead and set it up. So as I mentioned, I have all the directions here of kind of what we walked through as well, and when you can use them if you want to look back at that afterwards. But I'll just leave you with sort of these final thoughts is trying to think about payment plans as due dates that are revolving around a project date. If you are doing an event and we're sort of leading up to that event, trying to map out due dates that make sense most of the time. So if your clients are mostly booking you, let's say 6 months before whatever event date it is, setting up your payment plan so you're getting paid equally or as much as possible equally up until that due date. Or if they're booking you sort of like all over the place, sometimes it makes sense to have a payment plan that's for like a year plus and a payment plan that's for 6 months and less. But this is where I see a lot of the talk that's saying like it can't revolve around dates the way that I want it to. But really, it's more about like switching your mindset to maybe or working within Dubsado to make it work for you. So this is what I mean by due dates can't be set to automatic midway points, but you can sort of control that by offering different payment plan options or having the templates ready to adjust if needed. So when using automation, we can use more than one payment plan at a time, or I'm sorry, we can't use more than just one payment plan at a time when sending a workflow. So what I mean by that is your clients can't go on to a proposal and select that they want 3 payments or 4 payments or 2 payments and have it be completely automated. There are definitely workarounds and things that we can do to make that happen. Or if we can know ahead of time which payment plan they want, then we can automate really as much as possible. But I'm really just saying this more from like an automation standpoint and trying to make it as quickly as possible. I feel like I could definitely answer some more questions about that and go in deeper. I'm just looking at the chat and seeing, but I know that can be sort of a tricky thing, but I'm happy to answer more questions about that. But trying to think about like what one payment plan makes sense for these, let's say 3 packages that I'm offering to my clients to make it as easy as possible for me and for them. So feel free, like I said, to contact me with any questions. If you haven't yet, be sure to tag me on Instagram and enter that giveaway. If you're new to Dubsado, their sale is actually coming up at the end of the month on Black Friday, so you can get in for a really great price. One of the things I also really love is that there's no limit on their free trial, so you can go in and play around with this and test it out with up to 3 clients to see how you like it if you're brand new. But you can also use my code for 30% off at any time, but also during the sale. And you can find me at kellymccracken.co. That's my website or my Instagram there, or you can send me an email. I offer full Dubsado setup, so I'll set up everything for you, everything that you could possibly need. And I also offer coaching calls if you need any help. So please let me know if you do, and I'm happy to do that for you.
Kelly, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate your time and your diligence to answering those really specific questions. Those were awesome. There was only one other question in the Q&A that we technically didn't get to, but I think we may have answered it in doing the other examples. Carmen, if you're still here in the chat, let me know if you still had a question about the auto pay and recurring invoices that you were asking about. We did kind of talk a little bit about that already with some of the other examples, but if you're still here, Carmen, go ahead and let me know in the chat if you're good to go or if you wanted further clarification. We do still have a couple of minutes we can answer more questions, and same is true for anyone else. If you have more questions, we'll stick around for just a minute or two here, make sure everyone's got their questions answered.
Mm-hmm.
But Kelly, I thought that was fantastic. I know, like we said at the beginning, there's a lot of information to get through. And I can tell just from our users here, right, that it feels like there's a lot to know and it's always going to be specific to your business. But the base tenets of what you're talking about, of like the guideposts of you should do this or do that, or make sure you have reminders, that kind of stuff is always going to be true regardless of your business.
Mhm.
So hopefully this has been really helpful for folks who are able to watch the entire thing, stick around. We will be able to share these slides with folks, right, Kelly, after the webinar is done here. I'll include it in the email that everyone will receive just a couple hours. The system just takes a couple hours to process the recording, and you'll get the recording via email. We'll include those slides there. Cool. We just got a bunch of folks that are saying, thank you so much, Kelly. This was super helpful. I thought so as well, Kelly. This was really fantastic. So
Awesome.
Thank you all, Alexandra, Pamela, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Carmen, it sounds like I haven't heard from you, so hopefully we're good on that recurring invoice question. But yeah, I thought this was fantastic. We'll give it just a second. Kelly, anything else you want to add?
No, just get paid. That's the point, right? We want you to get paid.
Whole idea, Dubsado. We're going to help you save time, automate things, and get you paid.
Exactly. Like I said, this is the one thing everyone can set up at least some sort of automation or reminders to help themselves. So
definitely.
I hope you feel a little more confident to dive into that.
Perfect. Yep. All right, Kelly. With that, we'll go ahead and let you go. I appreciate all your time today, but it's been fantastic. All right.
Thank you, everyone, so much.
See you later.